Good evening, friends. Try to picture this. Your entire world has been compressed into the weight of a single backpack. Ahead of you lies 5 kilometers of an unmeasured white hell. Behind you are your burned-out hometown and the snowbound shelter you once called home. Every step carves a crack into the absolute frozen silence. In your palm are frost-bitten splits of skin. On your shoulder drags a life, and in your eyes is reflected the faint glow of a distant set of coordinates. This is not merely distance. This is a final march, wagering everything, crawling from ruins toward the outer edge of order. What you must cross is not only wind and snow, but the jagged terrain exposure when human nature freezes solid and the most stubborn ember buried deep in your own marrow, the thing called hope. Now turn off the lights, pull the blanket tight, and let's enter tonight's story together. You pull tight on the rope of the sled. The leather scrapes against the frost-seared cracks in your palm, sending up a dull, distant pain. Tank, your German shepherd, has been laid in the center of the sled. Beneath him is the last quilt you own, the one soaked with blood. On top of that, you've piled every scrap you could salvage from the ruins. An oil-stained tub torn from a garage, and several frozen winter coats stiff as boards. He lies on his side, breathing. Each breath draws a short, thick white line into the air. His wound is wrapped layer upon layer with bandages. The edges of the seepage have already crusted with frost. You take one last look at the half-buried basement. The steel security door hangs crooked on its hinges, like a can torn open by brute force. The insulation you nailed up by hand has peeled away from the walls, dangling to reveal damp, cracked concrete beneath. The air circulation ducts have been ripped apart, their edges jagged and uneven. On the floor lie shattered circuit boards, crushed tin cans, old Frank's jar of frostbite ointment with only a frozen smear left at the bottom, the stench of diesel, the metallic tang of blood, and the heavy, dull smell of something burned deep into the walls. This was your fortress. The forest air outside doesn't give you time to mourn. You check your backpack. Inside are 3 vacuum-sealed emergency ration bars, half a bottle of antibiotics, 2 rolls of clean gauze, a small bottle of rubbing alcohol, and a bundle of dried sage frank once pressed into your hand. You still have a handful of tools. A multi-tool, a screwdriver kit, a coil of copper wire, a multimeter. At your waist, the powder-actuated nail gun still holds half a box of steel pins. As for the drone that saved your life more than once, its battery is completely dead. You left it behind in the ruins. You drag the sled out through the building entrance. The snow has stopped, but the wind hasn't. It's like countless metal files, grinding exposed skin from every angle. The heating element in your mask emits a faint hum. At the edge of your vision, weak dawn light flickers. The glow of resistance wire doing its job. Outside the workshop, the thermometer reads -117 degrees Fahrenheit. The number no longer frightens you. It's just a physical constant you have to fight. The street is stranger than when you left it yesterday. Even the howling wind seems frozen in place. No longer screaming, just a heavy, rigid cold pressing against your protective suit. You step onto the snow. There's no soft crunch beneath your boots. Instead, it sounds like shattering glass, sharp, dense cracks. The snowpack has hardened into a solid crust, strong enough to bear your weight. The sled glides more easily than expected, but it's harder to control. You have to tense your core and steer with your entire center of gravity. Tank lets out soft, broken whines as the sled jolts. You stop often, slipping your hand beneath the tarp to touch his head, to make sure he's still alive. His tongue brushes the fingers of your glove, warm, rough. The GPS is clutched in your left hand. The blue glow of the screen is blinding inside your mask. The signal flickers in and out, but the waypoint refuses to disappear. 5 kilometers on a normal park trail. That's less than an hour's leisurely walk. Here, it's a chasm across a white continent. You choose the center of the main road. Buildings on both sides are buried up to the second floor, their windows reduced to black holes, like empty eye sockets in a skull. Behind some of them, faint flames tremble, survivors burning furniture or books for warmth. You don't approach. Fire means people, and on the eve of resource collapse, people are deadlier than the cold. Your strength drains quickly. The 45-pound modified survival suit, combined with the sled's load, makes every step feel like pulling your legs out of wet asphalt. Your lungs burn. Even after passing through the heated mask, the air is still dry and icy, scraping your throat raw. You force yourself into a rhythm, a technical marching pattern, to pull your focus away from the haze creeping into your mind and the pain screaming in your muscles. 100 steps. Stop. Check the GPS. Adjust course. Give tank 2 sips of water. Another 100 steps. After about a kilometer, hallucinations begin. In the corner of your eye, shadows seem to move between the ruins. When you stop and stare, there's nothing, just snow sculpted into strange shapes by the wind. Fragmented whispers drift through your ears, like radio static shaped into voices. When you hold your breath to listen, all that remains is the roar of your own blood pounding in your ears. You know what this is: cold, exhaustion, and isolation working together. You bite the tip of your tongue. The metallic sweetness and sharp pain bring you back. For a moment, you pass a bus stop. The ice sculptures are still there. Another full day of extreme cold has thickened the frozen layers around them. Details have blurred. They look less like people now, more like abstract art. This time, you don't turn your gaze away completely. You notice one figure seems to be clutching something, a brown paper envelope. It's sealed inside the ice. Maybe something he brought home from work. Maybe a child's homework. It doesn't matter anymore. You look away. At the 2-kilometer mark, you stop at the edge of an open plaza. The fountain basin at its center is now a massive bowl of fractured ice. You lean against an SUV buried in snow, only its roof visible. You break off a fingernail-sized piece of ration bar, let it melt slowly in your mouth, mixing with saliva into a thick syrup before swallowing. You give Tank a small piece too. He chews with effort. You turn on the radio. Most frequencies are just static, but after adjusting the antenna, the military band crackles back to life, intermittent, broken. Third sector confirms survivor beacon coordinates. After 10 minutes, you force yourself up. Staying still means rapid heat loss. Muscles stiffen faster. You haul the sled forward again. Soon, you leave the main road and cut into a low-rise residential area. The snow here is deeper. Beneath the crust, it's soft. The sled sinks into hidden drifts again and again, and you have to pour enormous effort into dragging it free each time. Your breath crystallizes into thicker frost on the inside of your visor. Visibility worsens. You wipe the mask constantly. Then, in the instant your glove clears the visor, your foot drops into nothing. The solid-looking crust collapses. One leg plunges down, all the way to your thigh. The cold spears through your suit's insulation like an ice pick straight into bone. You grunt. Your balance snaps. The sled tilts violently. Tank yelps. You clamp down on the rope with everything you have, barely keeping yourself upright. You extract your legs slowly, carefully. That's when you realize you've stepped through the snow-covered ceiling of a staircase. You kneel at the edge and knock away more snow with the butt of the nail gun, revealing a black void below. A rush of stale air spills out, musty, dusty, but warmer than outside. A few degrees, maybe. There could be untouched supplies inside, or something else entirely. You look at the darkness, then at the GPS 3 kilometers remaining, then down at Tank, breathing fast in the sled. Exploring means unknown risk and lost time. But staying on the surface, Tank might not make it. You pull out the small flashlight wrapped in waterproof tape and clamp it between your teeth. You begin clearing the entrance, carefully shaping a ramp wide enough for the sled. The stairs are short, about a dozen steps. At the bottom is a heavy wooden door, half open. A tarnished brass plaque reads, "Barely legible community reading room." You stop, listen for several seconds. There is nothing, no sound but your own breath and heartbeat. You push the door open. The beam of light splits the darkness. What you see makes you flinch. This is not an abandoned space. The reading room, maybe 600 square feet, has been turned into a semi-enclosed fort made of desks, chairs, and bookcases. At its center sits a makeshift fire pit fashioned from a metal trash can. Inside, a weak flame flickers. Books are burning, torn pages blacken and curl, releasing brief bursts of heat. Curled around the fire are 7 or 8 figures. When your light sweeps over them, gasps of terror erupt. They shrink back. You see grimy child's faces and adult arms instinctively thrown up to shield them. An elderly man with graying hair and a stooped back steps forward. He's wearing multiple ill-fitting sweaters. In his hands, he grips a thick hardcover book like a shield. You stay at the doorway, slowly. You raise your empty left hand. You switch off the flashlight and activate your headlamp's low-intensity red mode. Under the red glow, their faces come into focus. The old man's deeply lined face is etched with exhaustion and fear, but his eyes burn with stubborn resolve. The oldest child might be 10, the youngest may be 4 or 5. They're swallowed by oversized, filthy down jackets. Wide eyes stare at you. The sled and the indistinct shape beneath the tarp. Your voice, filtered through the mask and fatigue, comes out rough. My dog's hurt. We'll stay one night. At dawn, we're gone. The old man watches you carefully. His gaze flips between your strange suit, the nail gun at your waist, the sled. He notices Tank's shallow rise and fall beneath the tarp. There's nothing left to take, he says. His voice is hoarse, but carries the precise diction of a former academic. Except the books. He pulls them closer to his chest. There for the children. For memory, you understand his fear. He thinks you're a scavenger who burns books for warmth. You shake your head and point to the fire pit. Burning them like that wastes most of the heat. You pull the sled inside slowly, deliberately keeping your distance. You stop near the door, far from their fort. You set down the rope and check on Tank. The bandages haven't shifted, but his body temperature feels lower. You pour a little alcohol into the bottle cap and light it. A faint blue flame flickers. You shield it with your hand, swarming the alcohol. Soaked gauze you're about to use on him. You're not trying to heat the room. Just your hands, just enough to help him. Your movements are practiced, focused. You ignore the others completely. The old man watches. The tension in his eyes eases, replaced by confusion and curiosity. "You a doctor?" he asks. "A technician?" You reply without looking up, injecting the next dose of antibiotics into Tank. Silence falls again. Only the soft crackle of burning paper and the children's suppressed coughing fill the room. The temperature inside is higher, maybe -4 degrees Fahrenheit, but still deadly for kids. You notice how crude their fort is. Gaps between furniture let cold air pour through. When you finish with Tank, you stand and look at the fire pit and lay out. Your technician's instinct kicks in. You step closer. The old man tenses again. "If you want to preserve those memories," you say, "you need to burn smarter." You don't ask permission, but your movements are slow and obvious, so they can see your intent. You dismantle part of the fort, pulling out burnable wood from desks and chairs. You tip over a tall bookcase to form a windbreak. Angle tabletops against it to create a reflective slope, directing heat toward the children's corner. From your toolkit, you pull out your last roll of aluminum HVAC tape and seal the gaps between panels. you leave their stack of books untouched. Instead, you drag over several old couches from the far end of the room. You slice them open, ripping out foam and stuffing. These ignite fast, you explain, good for getting books going without wasting them. You adjust airflow under the fire pit. The heat begins to concentrate. The scattered warmth gathers. Color slowly returns to the children's faces. The coughing eases. Once the fire stabilizes, you place intact composite boards vertically into the pit, so they don't smother the flames and burn longer than if chopped up. The old man watches the entire time. His arms slowly lower. He walks to a shelf and pulls out a thick, oversized volume and a roll of blueprints bound with a rubber band. He places them at your feet. This, he says, pointing to the book, a faded North American wilderness survival encyclopedia, might help you. And this, he unrolls the blueprints, hand-drawn schematics of the city's old underground utility tunnels, maintenance passages and exits long forgotten. I helped archive municipal records years ago. Some of these routes might still be usable. You pick them up. The book is heavy, but knowledge lasts longer than ration bars. In your mind, the lines become three-dimensional pathways. Some dotted routes could bypass the deadliest surface cold. You nod once. No theft, just acceptance. You slide the book and maps into a waterproof side pocket on the sled. You return to your corner, sit against the wall. You pull tank halfway into your arms, sharing your body heat through the suit. Under flickering firelight, fed by fragments of human civilization, you and these strangers pass a relatively safe night. Near dawn, you ask if they want to come with you to the survivor base. The old man shakes his head. He says he trusts no one anymore, not even those flying official flags. He warns you not to place too much faith in any base. You nod. You know better than most. In a world without law or government, survival is personal. Still, waiting to die isn't living. Maybe it's real. Under their quiet gazes, you pull the sled back up the stairs and disappear into the storm again. You don't look back. Following the map, you find a buried ventilation shaft leading into the city's old drainage main. The iron grate is already broken. You pry it open easily. Inside, it's dark and damp, smelling of dust, but the temperature holds steady around -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Compared to the surface, it's paradise. More importantly, there's no wind. You switch on your headlamp and walk along the thin ribbon of half-frozen wastewater. The map shows the main channel connects to old railway maintenance tunnels. The tracks are your next route. An hour later, you climb out through an access hatch. You emerge beside a rail spur. The tracks are buried in snow, but the twin raised lines are still visible. Rail beds are easier to walk. The gravel beneath the snow offers traction. After 2 kilometers, the tracks disappear into a mountain tunnel. The entrance has been reinforced. Sandbags, derelict rail cars, welded steel sheets, forming a narrow checkpoint. Above it, a lookout post. Beside it, A faded red flag flaps weakly. You slow down. At 50 meters, you stop. Position the sled between the rails as cover. You step behind it, draw the nail gun. But don't raise it. You wait. 2 figures appear. They're wearing bulky rail worker coats, fur hats, scarves pulled over their faces. In their hands, a homemade spear and a fire axe. They don't approach immediately. "Stop. Where'd you come from?" The voice is tense, breathless. Passing through, you reply calmly, heading for the coordinates at longitude 116. They exchange glances. "You know what's there?" one asks. "A base." "There is a base," the younger one adds. "But not just anyone gets in." Hefts the axe. "You bring something. Skills." You weigh the words. Your expectations drop. But you have to try. "I have skills," you say. "Mechanical repair. Power and heating systems." They whisper to each other. Soon, a man in a military overcoat with a scarred face emerges. No weapon in hand, sharp eyes. He's the leader. "You fix machines?" "Show me what needs fixing." He gestures you inside. The tunnel is wider than expected. Makeshift rooms line the sides, partitioned with tarps. 20 or 30 people live here. A coal fire burns at the center weak. Smoky. People cough, faces blackened by soot. The temperature hovers around 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Show them. It's heaven. At the far end, you spot it. An old coal-fired boiler, rusted pipes branching outward. It's dead cold. "That thing," the scarred man says, "used to heat the station and power a small generator. Last week it smoked black and shut down. Fix it. You get paid. Fail. No food. No fuel." You park the sled. Move tank to a warmer corner, away from the fire. You inspect the boiler. Simple structure. Dirty, but workable. Fuel injector clogged. Airflow valve jammed. Pressure plate probably sticking. You dismantle it methodically. Soot and rust fall away. People gather silently. You clean parts with a splash of diesel, polish valve surfaces with a file, clear carbon build-up. No replacements, just restoration. After more than an hour, hands numb but steady. "Try it." The leader pulls the lever. A low rumble. Smoke thins. Radiators tick as metal expands. Warmth, real warmth spreads. Cheers break out. Children touch the heated iron, eyes alight. The leader exhales deeply. "Expert," he says, clapping your shoulder. They pay you 6 heavy industrial fuel bricks, a pair of insulated snow boots far better than yours, 2 cans of cured meat, and at your request, a small bag of coarse salt. You leave. The leader walks you to the entrance. "Rules inside the base are strict," he says quietly. "Salt's valuable, but someone like you, you'll be fine." They don't like freeloaders or people with too much history. You nod. Tank is resecured. Fuel bricks lash tight. You glance back. People share canned food around the revived boiler. Then you turn and follow the tracks toward the waypoint. The wind eases slightly. But after a kilometer, that feeling returns being watched. You slow. Use the GPS screen's reflection to check behind you. Straight tracks, empty snow. But emptiness is suspicious. Near a utility pole, the snow looks disturbed, pressed, smoothed poorly. You alter your pace. Use abandoned rail cars and signal huts as cover. Eventually, you pretend to stop and check Tank's bandages. In your peripheral vision movement, two bulky figures duck behind a ruin. Amateurs, but dangerous. Revenge or hunger for your fuel and food. You feel not fear, but cold irritation. You remember Frank's shattered skull, Tank's wound, your burned home. A plan forms. Ahead is a lowland pond iced over. You hurry toward it. Stop at a spot that looks solid. You test the ice. Loud cracks echo. Then you step onto it. Only a few paces panic retreat. You drop a bundle wrapped in grease paper fake food, then hide behind a snowbank. They take the bait. They run. Step where you tested. When both bend to grab it, you rise. Fire the nail gun. Steel pins slam into flesh. They scream, run, slip, bleed. You watch coldly. They won't survive. You return to the sled. Tank nudges your hand. You pull the rope. Keep walking. The tracks split. A rusted spur leads towards snow-covered hills. The GPS signal stabilizes. You shut it off. Ahead, the base. Not a fortress, but a reinforced industrial compound. Domed warehouses in a shallow basin. Concrete walls. A rough wall of logs. Rubble. Vehicles. Over 10 feet high. Barbed wire. Makeshift alarms. Watchtowers. Armed guards outside the walls. Shanty towns, tarps, truck shells, snow pits, people huddled like ants. Inside patrols maintain fragile order. The smell waste, smoke, despair. You approach the gate. A soldier stops you. State your business. Responding to your broadcast. I have skills. Inspection. Confiscation. A heater breaks down nearby. You fix it in minutes. The gate opens. Inside order. You pass evaluation. Tank passes 2 certified as a working dog. You're assigned to facilities and energy maintenance. A bunk. A uniform, purpose. Months pass. Systems improve. Greenhouses grow. Lights come on. You become indispensable. Tank recovers fully. On an evening, the streetlights flicker on one by one. Circles of light tremble on the snow. Fragile. Persistent. Not loud like a diesel engine, but steady. You whistle. Tank rises. Together, you walk toward the mess hall to warmth, noise, and food. This light, small as it is, does not go out. Good night.